Hello, everyone. This is Tijen Genco. I am Master Certified Coach and Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. Welcome to our podcast, Coaching with Mastery and Elegance with Tijen Genco. Here it is another month. I have another beautiful guest along with our producer, Marta Regalado. Welcome, Cynthia.
Hi, Tijen. Glad to be here.
Wonderful having you here. And Marta, welcome.
Thank you.
Cynthia, what would you like our audience to know about you before we get into our discussion?
So my name is Cynthia Lait. I am a coach. I've been a coach for almost 3 years now, and I've been recently doing a lot of work with Tijen Genco on so many different things. So I've got my ACC, working towards my PCC, and I'm excited to be here. I recently completed a resilience course with Tijen, and I'm excited to talk about this and explore it a little further.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here. And Marta, where are you going to take us today?
So I wanted to get started by talking about resilience, a little bit about resilience in general. And Tijen, I know you always have your own, definition that's very unique and your own unique approach to cultivating, in this case, resilience. So I would love to hear how you define resilience and how it might differ from kind of the mainstream view of resilience, which is bouncing back even stronger after a challenging event.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And as usual, what I'm going to do, since Cynthia's experience is quite recent, I'm going to ask Cynthia before I share my view. Cynthia, what was in your mind as a concept of resilience before enrolling to my workshop? And how might the workshop has changed that perspective for you?
So resilience for me, when I saw the workshop, I actually had two goals in mind. One of them is part of I work full time as a change management lead, and part of my work is helping my colleagues become more resilient. And so I thought, oh, maybe I will learn something that I can share with my colleagues back at work. And then as a coach, I really wanted to say, we all are facing challenges. How can I help my clients become more resilient and grow? So I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. What's Tijen? How does she see it? And what can I learn? And what can I share with my colleagues and clients?
Yeah, thank you. So in general, as Martha, you were saying that what I hear and see and read, that the resilience is being thought as some adversity happens and we do stuff to recover from it. In my view, resilience isn't about recovery and bringing systems back to the same space before the adversity. In my view, resilience is sometimes welcomed and sometimes unwelcomed view of the experience. Yet every time an adversity, that there is an opportunity of that adversity, that whether we can actually advance through it, we can maintain our status quo where we were, consciously, unconsciously, spiritually, physically, and emotionally, and whatever that may be, or we can go backwards. That in the concept of resilience is often presented is to whatever you need to do to come back into where you were, land on your feet. It's not often talked about how it takes us backwards in some cases, which is the trauma response, right? We get bitter and upset and cannot recover. But in my view, is to collaborate with the universal forces that brought forward that experience, so that whatever that intention of that experience wanting to change us to, that is fully potentialized as part of my niche. So that's my definition then.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tijen. And it sounds like there's so much growth. It's not this, I always picture when someone, uses the analogy of bouncing back, it's almost like this rubber band that you pull and then it comes back. There's a coming back to where you were, as opposed to this moving forward, seeing it as an opportunity and growing from it, even if it's not wanted, which, I can understand.
Yeah, because every adversity, I'm using this terminology the last few years, that introduces us to our edges.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we do when we meet with the edge? I don't like my edges, so therefore I want to push them away further, expand. Or we can hit the edge and then stay with the edge, or we can go back and shrink, bounce the edge and come back. So that's sort of a response. Oh, here is the edge. Okay, what would you like to do with the edge? And that's sort of an experience is my approach.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Tijen.
Thank you for asking. Yeah.
And Tijen, I know you developed the course from your own experiences. So I'm curious how that, kind of impacted, the development of the course.
Yeah, so as Cynthia mentioned that she is an expert in change leadership, and I also have that skill set in my experiences. Before I was a coach, I was a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma and change methodology. So in a way, I, as a master black belt, I often look at the steps to mastery, repeatable steps, and what can one do to actually get into mastery. In this case, the mastery of resilience, mastery of meeting the adversity, meeting the edge, and what do you do when you do that? So then I looked at, as I moved through the adversities, in this case specifically, I was looking at the steps. They were helpful as I received my diagnosis with a health condition and how I moved myself through that. And I noticed what was helpful for me. So therefore, I developed 5 steps towards building mastery in resilience. And that's where I also do the workshop, which Cynthia attended, to help others to understand the methodology. In this way, it's not necessarily building a resilience for this context, for that context, or whatever that may be. One can take that and implement in any adversity in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's amazing. And, the steps to mastering resilience. I think and then you have, your background as an engineer, and now, being a coach and bringing that together in order to create, these steps and bringing in your personal experience of what worked for you. It sounds like it's made it so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to hear before, we get into, Cynthia's going to, show us her beautiful illustrations. I would love to hear the steps. And then after hearing the steps, we can have Cynthia show us her illustrations.
I think that let's go with each step with Cynthia's depictions, and so that we can actually explain everybody how it is. And what I would like our audience to know, Cynthia did not mention in her introduction, she is also a gifted artist. So as Cynthia attends to my courses, she uses her artistry to help her learn and summarizes not for herself, but also shares with the other participants. Do you want to share anything else about that, Cynthia?
It's something that I've always done. My notes have always been full of drawings and scribbles because I tend to think in pictures and it helps me learn. And what I didn't realize, but I've realized as I've been through your courses, I was a little shy about posting them because they were just my drawings and everybody really resonated with them. And I think to that point, because people tend to be, a lot of people are visual learners, seeing things in pictures helps to learn. So I was thrilled to share them and I've done a lot more with them. I've really enjoyed the process.
Absolutely beautiful. So then let's get us started with the first drawing for that Cynthia developed. So do you want to share that with our audience, Cynthia?
I will.
All right. So the first step is detachment. And the detachment is for us to really understand the event that introduces us to our edge, yet not associate our identity with the event. Rather, seeing the events something that we are experiencing, having an experience with. And therefore, then it's not, there is a space between the experience and our core identity. And once we separate that, then there are opportunities and spaciousness for us to respond to this event from our strong center. So how would you like to explain your steps and drawings to our audience, Cynthia?
Sure. So I went in, so when I went into the class, I didn't expect that I would be actually going through a resilience process myself. And so I brought this old story that I had with me since childhood and that I dealt with it. I've been through therapy and it was always still kind of there. And I thought, you know what, let's try it with this particular story. And so with this particular step one, part of the homework assignment was, this event had happened to me and oh, woe is me, oh, blah, blah, blah. And when I wrote the story about how challenging it was and these kinds of things. And all of a sudden, when you start looking at it detached, you think, oh, wait a minute. And seeing that separation between the event and yourself helps to take out this whole victim thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So detaching from the event was so helpful, just thinking about it happened, but like a coach, you always get in coach position with the event and it happened, it's out there and you can decide what you want to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So then once we see us separate from the event, then there is a possibility of choice when we are identifying with something. Then we are in it and our view gets to be limited. Our capacity to choose something else becomes unavailable.
And I love your the quote I have at the bottom: sadness is upon me. It's not I'm sad and I'm in the middle of it. It's like I'm having a sadness experience, but it doesn't swallow you up. It's happening and it's there, but it's not going to take over.
Yes, and in detachment, thank you for bringing that up, Cynthia. One of the things that I do with my audience is to separate again ourselves from the experience, so using the spacious language. Mm-hmm. And when we say I am sad, then that there is this identification. When we express it as there is, at this moment, I am experiencing some sadness, that there is then impermanency to that. So in the detachment phase, the first step, we create space with our language, with our thoughts, with our response to the event, so that we are not necessarily connecting fully. And that's where the very first section of Cynthia's drawing that shows the choice becomes available. Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a wonderful drawing. And I love the first part, the judgment, where there's, the little person, and they just seem very consumed with something.
Yes. Yes, and then we can see that there is this thought and a belief and event, understanding what we're thinking about the event, and then what exactly that we can actually, once we understand and there is the spaciousness, we can then choose another thought about it. So that becomes available. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And the part where it says the event is not me, and how the not is emphasized, I think that's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Another realization as I'm looking at this drawing and thinking about it, and I saw this happen, is when you start with this one story in your mind, all of a sudden, because our brains like to be right and our brains like to tell stories, you start creating this lens about through which you see other, oh, here's another version, here's another reason why this happened here. And so you start believing that whatever happened, this event is, everything else is linked to that and connected to it. And you continue in this whole victim and powerlessness story.
Absolutely, yes. And it becomes the overtone or undertone that dictates the rest of the life experiences.
Yeah.
Has an opportunity, I would say, to dictate that, versus that coming back to the power. Yeah. Should we go to the second step, Marta?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Let me bring up step number 2.
So the step number 2 is focusing on the now, which is that once we get into bringing ourselves, start a position to see that event is different than us, we started to have some possibility of our staying present with it. When we are fully identified with the event, it often then produces anxiety, as Cynthia was talking about, powerlessness. And in that state, our ability to function diminishes. So another thing also is helpful through the resilience experience and adversity, that narrowing the focus, when we are envisioning towards something that we want to bring into our lives, we can expand our vision. But when we are facing something and having a reaction that we don't want that, then the expansive vision actually can be not as helpful, because we start to see how it can play out and all that. Because envisioning in the positive is helpful, envisioning in the negative is still helpful, enriching the experience in the other undesired state. So therefore, I recommend narrowing the vision into the now. So in this step, I say that whatever that you can function in this moment, you need to focus on that. So at this moment, let's say that you have an illness, you can say, well, I do have that diagnosis. At the moment, though, I don't have a pain. At the moment, I can still hold my glass and drink water. At the moment, I can walk into the grocery store. Whatever that may be, that reassuring the self, there is still functionality of the self. There is still capability of the self. And this step is about that. So what would you like our audience to know about your experience and the drawing, Cynthia?
So focusing on the now was really helpful, because all of a sudden you stop. What it is it's you're taking all of your energy and you're focusing it over where you have control, and it's not in the back. Oh, she did this, he did that. All of this storytelling, which you can spend time doing, but it's not going to get you anywhere. And it's almost in my mind a waste of energy, where we're given this gift of energy every day. I want to focus it on places that are going to help me get to where I want to go. So that whole analogy around the energy, where it's scattered and you're doing all these different things, that telling all these stories and woe is me, you can do that. But I get a lot more benefit out of, oh, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? How do I reclaim my power? And what's next for me? So that was super helpful.
Glad to hear that. Yeah. So what's coming up for you as you hear us and look at this image, Marta?
I think it's so interesting to see. I haven't taken the resilience course myself. It's on my list. So I think it's so interesting to see it drawn out in this way. And, Cynthia, there's so much creativity, and, there's, the little person with the weights, and it's wonderful to see. And I love how, just focusing on the present moment, it's something that's so, I guess, actionable. It's something that, we can all do in this moment. As you were talking, I was thinking of myself sitting in the chair, taking notes, the pen in my hand. It's so accessible. And yet it's so difficult to do. It's something we don't naturally tend to do, but it's something that it's quite easy once you kind of, you start practicing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Marta. Cynthia talked about energy. So energy casting is a thing that when we are envisioning something, worry, for example, we are then taking our energy and putting into the something, an envisioned state that is not true just yet. So then it diminishes the energy availability into the present moment. And when we are having negative response or regrets about something happened in the past, not forgiveness and so on, then we are taking our energy and casting into the past. Again, it's diminishing energetic availability into the moment. So in this case, we are calling our energy from the ghost lands into this present moment, that to enhance the functionality and our response to the moment. Yeah.
And it seems like that is so conducive to one's well-being.
Absolutely. And also remember, when we meet our edge, then we question our capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we really need to, even if that means I'm holding a pen, oh, cool, like the little babies, right? They walk and they are so excited about it. And
Yeah.
we better get back to that. So whatever that may be, but it's also helpful that bringing our attention into the moment and narrowing the focus into where it needs to be, that helps us. Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to step number 3 then. So the step number 3 is about managing something that we can do and value. Finding something that we can do and value. So in this case, we brought our attention into the moment, and now this is further building on our capability within the presence of the adversity. And I mentioned about, I developed a system when I was facing with a health challenge. I was thinking that, yes, the doctors I'm collaborating with, are deciding the course of my treatment. And it felt for me being out of control, but because I couldn't decide what treatments I want to get, at least in that collaboration. So I needed to find something along that would give me a sense of empowerment, which was for me managing my diet. I value eating healthy food. I am capable of, despite the illness, I was still capable of finding foods that I can cook and manage. So that actually, again, builds further capability of the person and also gives them a position in that adversity. Oh, I'm still functioning and I'm not fully lost my power into this. I can do certain things. So yeah, and Cynthia, do you want to talk about how this step impacted your childhood trauma?
Yes, what I love about this step is, and I actually like that it's separate from step 2. Step 2 is you bring people back into the present. And then now it's like, okay, now that you're in the present, what can you do? So for me, it was this reclaiming of my power, and I started realizing that I actually gained a lot from this experience. So what can I do with what I have now? What choices do I have? And what do I value? What matters to me? And it's like, oh wow, it's a really interesting question, because it got me out of this. I have that little Chicken Little. I don't know if you're familiar. Chicken Little
Yes.
is an old childhood story, and I use it a lot with my clients when they're in this freak out place. The sky is falling, sky is falling. I'm like, okay, so I'm like, okay, well, Chicken Little, what do you want to do with your Chicken Little? And for me, it's like, oh, well, with Chicken Little, I'm going to bring Chicken Little in. Say, come on, you're okay. And what are we going to do now? And having this capability of making choices was so powerful for me. And really, I have a lot of choices. I have an infinite number of choices. So it was very grounding, and I tend to be very productive. And I was like, oh, I can do these 5 things. And so I did them.
Yeah, beautiful. And what Cynthia is sharing, Marta, is that in a way, this step supports people to get in a different relationship with the experience. Obviously, during the workshop, I facilitate the learning and growth with additional tools. But up until this step, often people don't realize the gifts of that adversity, because their focus is so much into poor me and that unwantedness of that experience. Here we start to collaborate with it. Here we start to partner with it. Regardless of you want to partner with it or not, it is already partnered up with you. So what are you going to do with that partnership? It becomes alive in this step.
Yeah, so this is interesting. It's where kind of you let go of that resistance
Mm-hmm.
and you start partnering with the experience. And it sounds like there really is like it would be too difficult to just jump into step 3. So I see, why the necessity of step 1 and step 2 in order to be able to, help you view something as, what is the gift in this experience, because it's so easy to say there is no gift.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And remember that in coaching, we're not forcing anyone. And a couple of the participants in this time around, when I hosted the sessions in August, they came like Cynthia, wanting to learn more so they can present things to their clients. And some people thought I was going to teach the methodology. And so it was a surprise for them. And in a way, they learned. But the thing is that I'm also utilizing other coaching methodologies that I've developed to support and soften the client's experiences to prepare them for each step. Otherwise, if you just take 1, 2, 3, it may be still a clunky way of transitioning. That I do guided visualizations, that's self-reflection assignments, and group coaching and group discussions and group sharing. There are all other supportive experiences through the workshop that prepares transition to this step.
And as a participant, I just want to add, as a participant in that workshop, it was fascinating because I could see that we are all progressing at different rates. And for people who weren't progressing as quickly, when they saw people who were, and from my experience, when I saw people who were further along, I'm like, oh, that's what it could be if I went over there. So seeing everybody at that different places was so helpful in my development, because I appreciated that everybody has their own journey, and to your point, Tijen, when I work with clients, they decide the pace. I don't. They get to decide how quickly they go through each step.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Cynthia. Yeah, and everybody actually left the workshop at different places. And that's the freedom, and you can come and do it. In fact, yesterday, during one of my other courses, there were 2 participants that moved through that workshop. One of them, I could think, had a larger adversity with a larger impact capacity than the other one. Yet she moved through beautifully. She was ready, and she even forgot the other person was there. And she was telling her, well, you should have taken Tijen's resilience. She was there, and she did tell me afterwards she still needs some integration space. So it's, in a way, whatever people gonna do, they will do it, but they still find some freedom through the steps. Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful, Cynthia, how, you noticed how people were, in different parts of the journey. And it was something that felt inspiring to you, someone who might have been or who was a little bit further ahead, as opposed to like feeling like disheartened or frustrated. But it was more like, okay, this is a possibility. And, it was inspirational. So I really like that. Thank you for sharing.
And for me, it's beautiful, right? Cynthia, actually, I do have, for viewers who are interested in watching this, in a YouTube Genco coaching channel, a whole playlist about each step as longer discussions. And Cynthia went through them. It was available to the whole participants, and then created these drawings. And she was like, okay, now we're going to do, and it's in a way inspiring to other participants. So it's beautiful for me as a facilitator to show everybody it's okay to be wherever you are in the journey. And some people are going to be further, some people are going to be moving slower, and that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so empowering just looking at these drawings, and seeing the journey visually. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's beautiful. So let's go to the step number 4, Cynthia.
Okay.
So the step number 4 is about integration, which is, coaches are quite familiar with it, right? The digestion. What is it that whatever we're doing how is that embodied? Because I call this an indigested life, right? When we face an adversity, it sits in like something you ate and they did not agree with you. You want to throw up and you can't. You keep thinking, shall I throw up? Maybe I try to digest, and you take digestive aid pills and they make other issues with you. So up until this point, that was all of those 3 steps was bringing you here. And that's where the highest potentiality of the adversity is present. Because the more we collaborate with it, better than we can go to wherever it meant us to go to. wherever the adversities are the change facilitators. And we can take the change and go with it, or resist the change and then keep hitting like the roller coaster, right? And you keep holding on and hitting into the chair. And so that's this step. It's in a way appreciating the experience. Who do you become out of that? What is the possibility of your further becoming out of that? And when you take it in and digesting it, what will be your response to the outer world? And how do you display your wounds with like a beautiful jewels that you own? And Cynthia, do you want to talk about your rock experience?
I would love to. This is actually, for me, this was the biggest insight. Instead of, and the drawing there is this car that's dragging these cans of these weights behind it because, oh, I'll have all of these wounds. All of a sudden, when you said to put them in a display case, it changed everything for me. And I ended up, part of the assignment in that part of the class was to rewrite your history. And as I started rewriting in this new way of looking at it, that this had happened for me, and all of these things taught me so much, and I started tapping into all of these abilities that I have that I don't always appreciate. Like, wow, this was pretty effing awesome. It was just, you start looking at this full appreciation. And what I loved about it, I just recovered so much power. It was almost as if, when I had this, and again, this wound, I'd been to therapy, I had packed it away in the closet, I'd locked the door, I'd put duct tape. I didn't talk about it. But what I didn't realize it was doing to me was that it was almost like holding down a full balloon in a pool of water. And so I was still using energy to keep it tapped away, keep it packed away. And then when I started doing all of this, I had all this newfound energy I didn't realize I'd been using to keep it packed away. So for me, this was just so energizing to come back with this story, because really, and I tell my clients this, we are the librarians of the books in our head. We get to decide what books are in there. And I've been sitting there with this whiny book about this story. I'm like, okay, you know what? We're burning that book, and then we're writing a new story about this experience that's just so much more empowering and so much more energizing and fun to tell.
Beautiful. And that's where we talked about energy casting, right? That all the energy returns, and Cynthia is talking energetically beautifully. You also had like carrying the stones versus the diamonds. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So for me, the image that came up is during the class was I'd been carrying, I just had this huge dramatic scene. I'm carrying this big bag of heavy rocks behind me, and I'm dragging them along because they're so heavy. And what happened during the class is I actually stopped, I opened the bag, and the rocks were there, but when I cracked them open, there were diamonds inside. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I've been carrying this treasure with me this whole time, not stopping to look at really what gifts were there. And that was another huge insight for me.
Yeah, beautiful. And that was around integration phase. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also a little frame here that I'm looking at, which is, it sounds like it's how the course has helped you in your coaching, where it says how to coach, avoid toxic positivity. And then the second one that says stay for deep emotions.
Stay with, that's a W with a slash.
Emotions. Okay.
Yeah, that was a big lesson for me, is that you could see, I was watching the other participants, and there were some challenging emotions because we all had different traumas in our life, and some people just needed to stay with it longer than others. So allow your client to stay with their emotions so that they can process them, because again, if you rush them through the emotions, they're going to be pushed, they're still going to be holding down that ball. So they need to stay with it and process it in whatever time it takes.
Yeah.
Digest it, as Tijen would say, going from the undigested life to an integrated, digested one.
Yeah. And I often say to my clients that what did sadness do to you? You know, why do we discriminate? I mean, the sadness can be as helpful as happiness. It is part of our systemic functionality. And so once people feel okay, and there is also part of the group coaching, and this is what the car is actually depicting, that I was talking about in another video, that when we don't process the emotions, they are like those wedding cars with the tin cans behind. Wherever you go, they're gonna be making all these sounds through us. Click, clack, clack, clack. And then when you stop and look at it and take them in, then you can appropriate and utilize the capacity of each. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
something that, Cynthia, sorry, go on.
Oh no, one more thing about this, what I love about displaying the scars is when you have these scars, there's also this hiding, this shame, and this kind of secrets around what you don't talk about. And all of a sudden, when you put them on display, it takes away all of that unnecessary shame around what happened.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Cynthia.
What were you gonna say, Marta?
You mentioned, you said, you know, what has sadness done to you, which of course, you know, what's, you know, and I think this is something, I believe this is what I learned from you, changing the word to and turning it into for. What has it done instead of to you? What's it done for you?
Exactly, beautiful. Yeah. And that's another, the rewiring, right? The neuro-linguistic patterns. It's important because our words create our reality. Has a lot to do with our perceived reality. Now I'm talking in the technical language. Well, this is still targeting some of the coaches as an audience, but yeah, it has a lot to do, how we talk about anything has a lot to do with our experiences, what we're creating. And going also back to what Cynthia is listing here, one of the things that I was again talking in another video about this is that when we go through an experience in a hidden way in the closet, a couple of the things that impact our integration is our inability to show the scars that Cynthia was talking about. But when we show the scars, now that's our medals. Oh, yeah, I'm a veteran. And that comes with an acknowledgement of the self and expressing that veteranness about whatever that might be. And there is then also our ability to relate to the world around us from being a veteran. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you. So then the fifth step is, and I call it optional step. And I still share it with my audiences, and that's a mastery. So it's in a way, now you've been through this, you became a veteran, that one can stop there and experience their life in their full capacity with this experience. And they can also choose to become a beacon of light for the others, because they now walk the walk, understand it, as Cynthia was saying, that took the stuff from the closet, put their veteran medals, and now how can you inspire others? That's a choice. So that is often, it's known that if you want to learn something, first thing you do is to read about it. The second thing is to practice. The third thing is when you teach, you become masterful at it. So this almost in a way getting into that mastery step. Yeah. What do you like to say about this, Cynthia?
So I'm actually, I think, just moving into the mastery area in the last couple of weeks. I didn't quite understand it when we were in the class, but I listened and paid attention. And I was thinking, how do I help another person? Well, some of these drawings can help other people, but what I'm finding is as we're talking about it more, I can help my clients. And then what I found this step was these superpowers that I didn't know I had, that kind of came up for me as I was going through this process. So that was really, really exciting for me.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah. And the superpower is that the claiming that veteran state, because you are changed now and you claim that mastery.
Yeah.
And so operating from that position of power is important. And then we can also support others' journey if they choose to get there. And there
And
are
what I'm sorry. And what I found is this muscle that I have now is really amazing, because I'm planning a trip here in a few weeks, and I had a little hiccup happen a week ago. And I tend to be an anxious traveler. I get to the airport hours early. I get very nervous about traveling. And when this hiccup happened, normally it would have sent me into this spiral about what am I going to do? And I repeated to myself, how is this happening for me? And what am I going to do with this? And I handled it, and it was no drama, no craziness. And I credit having gone through this course with this new muscle that I have, that when these things come up, my first question now is, how is this happening for me? And now what do I want to do? And it takes me out of the whole dramatization and the catastrophization, all of that. It's really lovely to have this new muscle.
Beautiful. Thanks, Cynthia. What are your thoughts for this one, Marta?
It's beautiful. I love how it ended up in, one superpowers, and how this, from the integration, comes the mastery, from the mastery comes the superpower, and then from the superpower comes, the being supportive of others.
Yeah.
And so the sharing and the helping and the giving.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
And you also beautifully summarized. And Cynthia, do you want to show all of them at once as we told the story and bringing into closure for this?
I can actually, one of the assignments in the class was to do a drawing about a new self-portrait, and I was wondering if I could share that.
Oh, yes, please do that.
Okay. Let me go ahead so the assignment was, and I love the analogy that you used, Tijen, was there's an art, I think it's in Japan, where you take a teacup, and if it's broken, you put it back together, but you mend it with gold, and it becomes a brand new, beautiful object with all of these gold pieces. And so that was the assignment, to do an image like that. And I kind of just came up with this, and I absolutely, I actually keep this. I have this up and around, and I use it as to inspire myself. So there's the new me after this event, and it's so empowered to see this little girl. I just love this image.
This is beautiful. Yeah, that was around the 4th integration week, right? With all brokenness, right? It's not the brokenness and me, but it is the new version of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful, Cynthia. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this with our audience. Absolutely.
All right. Let me put all the images together. I'm going to do a quick arranging on my desktop wall, so that you can see them, because they're all scattered everywhere.
Yeah, you take your time. So, Marta, what are your thoughts hearing this and having been through that workshop yet?
So my thoughts are, when am I going to sign up? I don't know if it's something that you're offering anytime soon.
No, it's probably going to be sometime in the next year. What is coming up right now, we can talk about that, is that I am actually going to speak about briefly in my upcoming branding workshop. It's I will be speaking at the Expert Coaching Forum at University of Texas at Dallas in September 28th. And then I will have the branding workshop. That's another one that I can offer once a year. Coming up in the beginning of November, it's enrolling the participants at the moment. And then mentor coaching sessions are available in November for registration. And I'm doing destination coaching in Jamaica if people like to take somatic mindfulness classes with me in beautiful Jamaican resorts and have coaching sessions while they are sitting on a lounge beach chair. They can find me there. They're all available at gencocoaching.com under upcoming events.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely. Cynthia, you ready for us?
I am. Let me go ahead and share my desktop. There we go. And there you have them.
So beautiful. Yes. So here are the steps that from detachment to focusing on the now and managing something we can focusing on something we can manage in value, integration, and mastery. So here we go. And thank you so much, Cynthia, for sharing your beautiful art and your experiences with us. And either of you have any upcoming events that you wish our audience to know?
Cynthia?
No, I don't. I'm actually looking, I'm signed up for your branding class. So I'm very much looking forward to that because I have a coaching business, but I will be launching it in a strong manner as soon as I figure out all of this branding work and this niching stuff next year. So, but you can find me at cynthialait.com and the name is CYNTHIALAIT.com.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cynthia. Marta?
And on my end, I'm also going to sign up for the branding course, which I'm excited about. It's one of my favorites. And then I'm not offering anything in particular for this year, but just kind of working on one-on-one projects.
Yes, and Marta actually has taken the branding workshop before, and for audience, it will be helpful for our audience to know that she helps with the copywriting and expressing the brand and the language on their website pages, right? Yes.
As a copywriting guide and a website designer.
Yes, beautiful. Good. Well, thank you, ladies, for being my partner today, sharing the experiences in resilience. And I look forward to being with you again soon.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you, Tijen.